Welcome to Film Talk Weekly Radio. This is Castle, your guest host. I am here with Michael Taylor Jackson. And Michael, you're in Austin right now,
Yes.
and you are a writer, director, and star of a film that is playing in Santa Fe on the 25th. We're going to get into those details,
Yeah.
called Underground Orange,
Hmm.
executive produced with a friend of the festival, Godfrey Reggio. And you are in Austin right now. Are you on tour with the film or do you live there? What's your.
Hi, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure. I've seen several of your episodes, actually, a lot of them with Godfrey, it turns out. Uh, and yeah, so we started a tour in Toronto 2 weeks ago. It's a tour in theatrical release of the film, and then we went to New York, and so it was really nice to play the Quad Cinema there. And yeah, really lucky to be able to travel to Santa Fe next week to meet up with Godfrey, who will be at the screening, and also today is Austin, Texas, and then I have like New Orleans and yeah,
Oh,
and
fun.
Florida. Yeah. So doing a tour. It's not easy, but getting the film out there is really important.
Right. And those are some great cities, including Santa Fe. Is Godfrey going to be in those cities as well? Or,
He's just coming out to the Santa Fe screening.
oh, lucky us.
Actually,
Okay.
yeah, it's he doesn't travel anymore really. And so each screening has a different invited guest. So in Toronto, I was able to meet and speak after the film with Bruce LeBruce, who's an amazing film director, kind of queer punk cinema. And in New York, I got to speak with Todd Verow, who's also has like a niche kind of mostly gay films and niche audience. Uh, Incredible. He's made so many features though. He's really talented, and so yeah, I'm really excited. In Santa Fe, we'll be with my executive producer, who's also kind of been a mentor to me, Godfrey.
Yeah, he's amazing. He received a Lifetime Achievement Award
Yeah.
at the Santa Fe International Film Festival a couple years ago. He's been on our show many times, and so you two are going to have a discussion after the film as well.
Right.
So that's a special feature, and there's still tickets available, but I
Yeah.
have a feeling it's going to sell out soon.
Hope
So
so. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Godfrey. Yeah. The I believe this is his first time uh as an executive producer of a fiction film. And so it's kind of wild how that happened. I mean, yeah. I
Well,
don't know.
tell us how it happened.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I actually it's kind of a crazy story, but I watched Koyaanisqatsi and Powakotsi, and I really loved it. Was so moving. Also on the DVD, Godfrey speaks about the kind of the background, the philosophical challenges of our ages, and I was really moved by that. And I just Googled him, and I found his email address to his foundation back then called the Regional Education Institute for Regional Education, and I now it's called just the Godfrey Reggio Foundation. But
Hmm?
the I just wrote a cold email to him and saying that
Wow.
saying I really love your work, and I had made a film on the homeless, my first documentary in film school, or not even in film school, like as an undergrad summer in the summer, and I I was moved by the way his cinema dialogues with kind of the injustices of the world, and that the way that technology and so forth influences our society. So I wrote him and I said, and I might be able to help you find financing for your next project. And the next morning I was like asleep on my mom's couch, and like at 11 o'clock. And my mom says, there's somebody on the phone, and and she comes in, and I pick up the phone and says, hello, this is Godfrey Reggio.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I said, oh my God, really? Oh my God. I was like really nervous, but I kind of explained to him, he has like a very profound presence. And I mentioned again that I was really moved, and that I knew some people because I went to high school with the family of the Eastwoods. And I knew some people who I'd shown his film to that were also very moved by it. So I met Godfrey under those kind of you know crazy circumstances that then over the years when I went to film school and I did a short because I moved into fiction from a documentary, the first film I made when I was in school, and then Godfrey, I sent him and he gave me notes, and then this was my first feature. So a feature film is a whole nother world, and even though Godfrey doesn't work in the fictional space, he works in the artistic space,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
he works in the experimental space. So I was really interested in his perspective, and of course he's has watched a lot of films, and so he I sent him the film, and in post production, when we were in post production a year and a half, 2 years ago actually, and I wasn't sure if he was gonna like it. He said to me once, there are people who are gonna think your film is terrible. There are people who are gonna love it, but prepare for all of the responses. And so I was kind of thinking maybe he would think it was terrible, but I sent it to him and I was kind of waiting for it like like a very profound critique, because he's able to do that. And he said he really loved the film, and he said he would be really honored, and I mentioned to him because he mentioned to me back then when I first met him that uh Coppola and Lucas helped get the word out about Koyaanisqatsi and Powakatsi, because he was kind of a revolutionary figure making a style of film that didn't exist yet.
Right.
So he kind of created an experimental form, and those masters were kind of pop cultural icons back then, and helped him get his word out into the public. So I asked him, you once told me that you need somebody to help you get your foot in the door. And I was wondering if you would be interested in, collaborating this way as an executive producer. And he said he would be honored. So,
Wow.
I was very moved. I was, of course, in tears. And so that's kind of how our relationship, even though I've met him about 4 times in different parts of the United States, uh, and over a span of like a decade. So uh, it's a uh, it's a special relationship um, that it's weird because we don't talk very often, but when we
Hmm.
do connect, it does bring up a whirlwind of emotions and insights into the way films are made. So
I get that.
yeah.
It gives me the chills. That's
Yeah. Can you
such.
believe that? Can you believe that? I just cold emailed Godfrey. Yeah, I just cold emailed his foundation. I didn't even know that he would reply, and he had a lot of people working for him then,
Right.
and he just called me on the phone. Um, and that's the kind of, I believe he probably goes on intuition. I helped organize a bunch of meetings. I don't know if anything panned out, but it was really important to me, when you see somebody whose work is really influential, not just to me, but to a lot of people, and what he has to say, his voice as an artist, as a creator. Um, I found it really important in the world, and I feel like my film now, under the circumstances that we are finding ourselves in this country with the rise of fascism,
Right.
and and with a definancing of film as well, a huge
Right.
definancing of the arts, of all public funds, as well as a censorship in the private sector
Hmm.
from streamers, that it becomes very difficult to get your word, your voice out into the public. So the film kind of, what do you do? My film deals with a lot of that, kind of as a theme. It's about a group of kind of queer militants who use art and forms of resistance to fight fascism, essentially, in Argentina. So that's kind of what the film is about. Yeah.
And we're back with Michael Taylor Jackson with Underground Orange. you're on tour. It's going to be showing at the Violet Crown in Santa Fe on Wednesday, June 25th at 6:30, with a follow-up discussion with you and Godfrey Reggio, who everyone in Santa Fe knows. Um, let's talk a little more about, I mean,
Mhm.
for Godfrey to get back to you like from a cold email, so generous. He also obviously recognized your talent in some
Mhm.
way, or your
Mhm.
like something about your email spoke to him.
Yeah.
Um, Usually people don't write you back. Like, I mean, I do some cold calling. I say, why not? It doesn't hurt, like at
Yeah.
least you tried,
Right.
but a lot of times it's just crickets. Um,
Yeah.
and you even got a phone call back,
Yeah.
but something,
Yeah.
something about you struck him, I'm sure.
Yeah, there was something very, very unique because I was able to organize a meeting actually where Godfrey flew in from from Santa Fe to Arizona to Phoenix because I knew a woman who wanted to f finance kind of radical projects about consciousness and the arts as well. And so I wanted Godfrey to meet her, and then there was a venture capitalist who was there, who was her boyfriend at the time, and and so it was a kind of a very radical, a very unique experience. This woman is the Hill Brother Coffee. I don't know if you're familiar
Yeah.
with that.
Hmm.
Yeah, Hill Brothers. Yeah, and so they had a beautiful ranch out in Sedona, and I picked Godfrey up from the airport in Phoenix and we drove to Sedona together in a rental car. And he didn't know who I was. He didn't know anything really about. He just had agreed to doing this, kind of went on a whim using his intuition. And I picked him up at the airport, and I was with a friend of mine as well who came out, who is a pretty famous. He's from Thailand. He has a big music and an art festival out there, and we picked Godfrey up from the airport. Can you imagine? And he didn't even know who I was because he assumed I was like 60 years old or something because I was friends with these very older people at the time, and it was because I had made this film on the homeless that people kind of approached me and interested in helping out in some way with the homeless. Certain people who had finance had funds and wanted to see if there was a way to help. So I kind of knew a few of these older people who had money and wanted to finance projects. And so anyways, Godfrey was like looking around, I remember, and I was like, I'm here, and he's like, oh my God, I thought you were like 60 years old, and I was like 20 years old.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, it was crazy. It was totally crazy. And he just kind of went with it, walked outside and smoked a cigarette as he
Uh-huh.
does, and then got into the car and we drove to Sedona on this like I think it's the Wrigley's Ranch or some other large ranch that this woman um had she was the owner of that. And so we met and we spent the weekend together, kind of having these discussions on what to, on where society, where society is right now. And Godfrey pitched his second to last film called Visitors, which he was searching for financing on. And that was and then that film I believe came out in 2013 or 2014. So this was, yeah, before that. And then after that, Godfrey and I met up a few other times in New York and in San Francisco because I knew a few people that I wanted him to meet as well. So I think I organized only really three different pitch dinners or rendezvous, you could say. And 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 of those, I'm not sure what happened, but then I didn't talk to him again for many many years until I was in film school in 2017, and I launched um a my first shorts and stuff. So, it's a good point, like you say, you never know with cold emailing, but if it comes from your heart, I think, and if it comes from your heart and really what you have to say um resonates with the work that the other person is doing, it's there's some sort of a genuine, authentic purpose behind it,
Hmm.
then I think, the universe responds in mysterious ways.
I agree. And I like the one time I met him, I saw that intuition of sorts. Like I only met him briefly, but I felt like he saw me, like
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Like,
Yeah.
but what a
Yeah.
kind and generous person, and
Yeah.
probably, yeah, this is probably just how his world works, and the right people come to him, and, he responds, and
Well, he started his life, as I believe in a monastery. I think he was in a brotherhood for the first 12 or 13 years of his adolescence. I think he was 14 to 27 or something. And he lived actually in a cloister with I believe the Christian brothers.
okay.
Um,
I don't know if I knew that. Yeah.
yeah, a Christian denomination. I think it was Catholic. I'm not positive. And he he would apparently go out to the streets, and he was a counselor to a lot of the gang and the street kids back then. So I think this kind of spirit of generosity and just service was
Mm-hmm.
has always been a part of him, it seems to me, and makes him very magical indeed to be around.
Mm-hmm. He is magical.
He's
And
magical.
clearly, people were generous to him and saw his talent. So he's paying it forward, which I love those kind of
Yeah,
stories too.
yeah.
Um,
He's this very tall Gandalf
yes.
kind of character.
Yes, I know. That's what I think of too. Yeah.
When I first met him, I mentioned that he kind of just like slid into the room,
Yes.
and he glides kind of around,
Yes. Yeah, I
and
totally see that.
yeah, yeah. I met him once in New York, and he was off to see Philip Glass, but he
Uh-huh.
stopped off to see me and just hang out for a bit. So yeah, I mean, we've met in different parts of the United States, and it's going to be a great kind of full circle. He taught me something called book ending in cinema, which
Okay.
is the dialogue that happens between the first image and the last image of a movie. So when you see the first image and the last image, what transpires in between there,
Mm-hmm.
as the transformation or the development of the project, and it I haven't seen him in a long time, and I don't know if I'll see him again, but it will be a very special bookend to be with
Yeah.
him there on
Yeah.
on, on Wednesday or the 25th of June in Santa Fe.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you had all these meetings, and a lot of people, or some people with money, that
Yeah.
also have these passions and care about the state of the world. Like, how do
Yeah.
you meet these people? Like, how does?
Yeah, I mean, my first project was on the homeless, and I just was taking like a summer course in undergrad in Santa Barbara, and I just started making a film with a camera, and I just started interviewing the homeless on the streets, and then I got somebody else who wanted to help me, and the two of us finished the project that summer, and it premiered in like the Santa Barbara Film Festival, which is a pretty good festival.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Pretty big festival, Santa Barbara International Film Festival. And then because of that, and because I was very young, there was an interest in my work because of that. When I think you can, if you have something strong to say, if you find your voice. I know it's such a cliche that they say in the writers groups and everything, but do you want to say? What is it that you are moved by? And I think that Orson or George Orwell has a famous quote which I think is great. He said there's four motivations for an artist or for a writer. Four main motivations. He said that one is, writers are passionate about history. They want to live in the past, And because they can't live in the past, they write about it and they live vicariously through that world that they create in their writing. And another type of writer, he said, is the ego writer who wants to just be famous. And that's a motor for a lot of people, a lot of artists
Hmm.
there. They get excited by the attention. And then there's another kind, which is a writer who's motivated by beauty and the aesthetics, like Oscar Wilde or Virginia Woolf, people who love the rhyme and the meter, the beauty of what they're creating. And the fourth type of writer, he said, is a political writer. And he identified with this type. It's a person who wants to make the world better, who feels that there's a social injustice happening and that they can fight that injustice through their work. And I'm sure that while Godfrey's intention was not to do that necessarily, he just did it anyway. It just kind of happened. And that's kind of how I resonate as a creator, as a filmmaker. I feel that, I mean, I also love history and beauty and so forth, but the the way that I think a younger artist can or filmmaker can, how do you meet people for financing? I think
Right.
you start small and you work on, the projects within your means and you find your voice, you find the motor of your work, and that has to be very convincing or seductive, uh, uh, or it has to be authentic to who you are,
Authentic.
first
Yeah.
of all. It has to be 100% authentic to who you are, and then it will go out into the world. And because that authenticity will be seductive, is what I mean to say.
Mhm.
Being yourself, being genuine, that alone hopefully will attract, for your next projects. And it's just about working slowly, into more complex projects. I ended up going to film school. Godfrey never went to film school, but I decided because of fiction, you are working with a lot of money and a lot of people. And I also just love watching films. So um, I went to film school, and I think that as well is helpful sometimes, depending on which school you go to. I wouldn't spend, hundreds, $100,000, $200,000 nowadays on tuition. I don't find that my path. But I went to a public film school in New York called Brooklyn College. They have a new program there. So it was rather affordable, kind of like a state school is. And so I have an MFA, but that also you develop relationships, and
Yeah, it's where you meet your people,
it's where
just,
you meet your people.
yeah. Yeah. I think that's
Filmmaking, yeah.
probably the most important part of it
That's
sometimes.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
filmmaking is very subjective. And this is something I learned only kind of while making my feature. The fact that, let's say there's 17,000 films sent to Sundance every year, and
Hmm.
let's say there's like 5,000 features that are sent and 12,000 shorts. Of the 5,000 features, they end up programming like 60. So it doesn't, of the 5,000 features, how does that 60 get programmed? And how much of that, like you say, are about relationships that you've developed? Because of those 5,000, there's probably 1,000 of those films that are pretty good.
Hmm.
Maybe 500 are excellent. Maybe 10% are actually excellent films. And, so why are out of 500 excellent films only 60? How do they make that decision and discard the other 450, 440 films? And I think it's really about networking, and luck and relationships that you've developed, and tenacity, I would say as well. There's a bit of that,
Hmm.
reaching out to people and finding people that who will know people and stuff like that. So you have to feel comfortable and confident with your work and with your voice and with what you want to say.
Right. You seem like a natural at all these things.
I don't know.
Uh,
Thank you.
and we're back. This is Film Talk Weekly Radio in Santa Fe, but I'm in Denver.
I'm in
Michael
Austin.
is in Austin. Michael will be in Santa Fe on Wednesday, the 25th, with Godfrey Reggio for the screening of Underground Orange and a conversation afterwards, which is really special. And this is all at the Violet Crown. And tell us a little about the movie, why the
Mhm.
film, why.
Yeah. Yeah, the film is actually, the title of the film comes from a group of militants in the 70s that Actually, they were mostly women. I believe it's the only kind of recognized like female guerrilla revolutionary group in the United States. And they planted a bomb in the Capitol building to kind of fight the US's stance against the war in Vietnam,
Hmm.
and nobody was hurt. And they dyed their hair a color called underground orange
Okay,
in order
cool.
to remain kind of clandestine.
Hmm.
And and uh so I read this fabulous book about that, and I got kind of inspired. And then I was also reading about polyamory, a book called The Ethical Slut, which is a great book
I've
on
heard of it. I
polyamory.
haven't, yeah.
Yeah, it's an incredible book. And also, read a lot of Hannah Arendt, and she writes about political philosophy. She was the only um, person at the Eichmann trial in Jerusalem in 62, I believe it was, that spoke English, French, German, and Hebrew. And so she could translate kind of all of the languages necessary to understand the trial from a very philosophical perspective, and she wrote about it in a book. And so I was reading a lot of nonfiction. I read a lot of nonfiction when I write fiction. I feel like I'm
Interesting.
not robbing. I guess I feel like I'm not robbing from others as much, but I take a lot of notes, and I think it's great to work the muscle of the writer, just note taking, just like
Hmm.
thinking about what you're reading and writing ideas about based on what you're reading and stuff. And I do that a lot. So I had actually taken a trip to Buenos Aires, because I love it there, and I had lived there doing an art class for a couple of years before that. And I took a trip because I felt like in film school when I graduated in 2019, I felt like I wanted to do my first feature down there. But in 2020, when I took a trip there in March, I got stuck because of the pandemic.
Right.
And I got stuck there, and I had rented an Airbnb just to try to work on a film project. uh and I was there renting for 3 months, and it turned into 3 years in the same Airbnb.
What?
Yeah, yeah, can you believe that? And so I ended up just staying there, and I wrote my script the first couple months of the in lockdown. And that during that time, uh I we did casting, and I wanted to make my film down in Buenos Aires. And so I kind of, wrote the script based on my personal experiences that I had when I had lived in Buenos Aires before that, and just kind of this imaginary world that I developed as a US citizen living in Argentina, and somebody who's sensitive that wonders why, for example, they call us Yankees there.
Hmm.
Uh,
They
you know,
do?
yeah, they
Yeah.
do. And there's not many countries, actually. I've never been called a Yankee anywhere else in my lifetime.
Outside of the
And
US. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, even in the US, I've never, it's weird. Like, I'm from California, but it's not, um, yeah.
Down south they call
They
you
use that?
Yankees. Yes.
Yeah. It's
I've
yeah.
lived in the south, and
Okay,
when I
yeah.
when I
Interesting.
go
From the
back,
north.
yep.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
Hmm.
Yeah, I know you live in the deep south.
Hmm.
So that kind of brought my curiosity. I went to a museum there about the Argentine dictatorship that they had there, their state terrorism in the 70s and 80s.
Hmm.
And I did some more research and found out that the United States financed it
Hmm.
uh, with their program of Operation Condor, which was kind of a military operation to put dictatorships into power in countries in order to kind of control some of the geopolitical aspects of that region, as well as other things. Like, they had said they were trying to combat communism, but there's a lot of other motives. And so the United States financed this state terrorism that ended in 30,000 people who were innocent, in the vast majority, had, just for reading a book on Marx, or young girls, young boys in school, 16, 17, 18 years old, because they were a part of the left-wing party. They were just brought in for questioning, tortured, killed, raped, and then tossed out into an airplane. And there's over 30,000 of casualties. And so I, as a sort of a person who's living in Argentina, who loves the country, I went to this museum, and it brought a lot of questions about, how do we as US citizens travel or live abroad ethically? Just like the idea of polyamory is about ethical non-monogamy. How do you have ethical relationships where people aren't cheating on each other and lying behind each other's back, as we know that, infidelity is a very large portion of the monogamous relations, and so is divorce. So I was curious about, wanting to explore kind of my own experience in Argentina, but also from the perspective of somebody who is, so my main character is this backpacker who
Hmm.
gets involved in this kind of queer militant group, and he doesn't really know anything about the history of the United States and Argentina. And he is asked to play the role of Henry Kissinger, actually, in a play that they are putting on, and he doesn't know who Kissinger is, and I think a lot of us probably don't have any clue what goes on, or you have to really read that aspect of US history. We have a big country with a lot of history. And so he has no clue who this character is, but he's actually kind of the enemy of Latin America. And so he has to play this role of this kind of like, with a German accent, like a faux German accent, and perform it. And he gets to know kind of who Kissinger is through playing the role, and gets to know kind of what the US did in Argentina, and how to redeem himself kind of in the eyes of his peers who he becomes romantically involved with. So the film, it deals with a lot of issues like, living abroad as a US citizen, polyamorous relationships, but that's kind of in the background. And it's kind of about, community and a group of people coming together to fight uh, kind of a dominant kind of fascist power in that country. So it's very similar to what's going on now, in my opinion, and in the world, and especially in the United States. What can we do given the horrific news we read about, the wars, just the takeover of power, the tyranny that we're faced with as U.S. citizens. And my film has an answer for that in its own way. And so
Good.
hopefully,
We
yeah,
need we
hopefully,
need an answer. I mean, it's really relevant,
yeah,
very timely
yeah.
topics in your film. Yeah.
Yeah, it turns out that as a subject of conversation, fascism is a very complex and a very bizarre, from my perspective, it's just a very I just don't understand how people want to dominate and exploit and manipulate. I mean, I'm not necessarily a naive person anymore. I'm sure I was when I went to Argentina, but um, just that aspect of the brutality which the which the this our country kind of represents in the majority of the world. And as U.S. citizens, when we travel abroad, uh, you know, we want to be treated fairly, and we don't necessarily, we're not responsible for what our government does in other countries, but at the same time, we do have, it doesn't implicate us in many ways. For example, the word Yankee is kind of a derogatory term in Argentina, and that's what they would call me. I wasn't the cause of the state terrorism. I didn't finance it, and I wasn't a part of any board approving that. But
Right.
but we are implicated
We're
in,
implicated by not
yeah.
overthrowing our government or challenging it
Yeah.
or,
Yeah,
you know,
like when you go to a country where being queer is against the law, all the citizens might not, it's not, like Russia or parts of Africa or the Middle East where people can be killed because of their sexuality.
hmm
Um, the citizens aren't necessarily at fault for those regions, but at the same time, they can vote to change those
but
laws
are
and.
we like complicit? So you were talking with the Violet Crown in Austin,
Mhm.
which
Yeah,
there's also one in Santa Fe, which is really
right.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, it's a chain. It's a beautiful cinema. I love their website. So,
Hmm.
when you're making a film and you have a DCP, which is what right now the theaters accept to project the film, it's a very complex kind of file format. It's very heavy, 150 gigabytes, but my film has some subtitles in English that I need to project, and so that file is separate, and so it's a very complex kind of organization where you're working with a team of people to ensure that when the film is projected, it's done accurately. And
Hmm.
yeah, with the subtitles, it's a challenge. And then, of course, having the posters around the theater is important.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Welcome back. This is Film Talk Weekly Radio. I'm Castle. This is Michael Taylor Jackson with Underground Orange, a film that is showing at the Violet Crown Wednesday, June 25th at 6:30. There's still tickets. There won't be long, I know this, because there's also a post-film discussion with Godfrey and Michael. And yeah,
Yeah.
so you're coming back to Santa Fe.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
Santa Fe. I can't wait to travel there again. I've been there once. I went through it. It has the Coco Pelli Zen mythology that is very enticing, kind of like the minimalist Zen architecture and
yeah,
interior design with the adobe and the wood. And there's like, yeah, that yeah, I'm really excited. I think the weather is gonna be nice. The mountainous region. Yeah, I'm really excited. And you mentioned that Meow Wolf started there. That's incredible. Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
It's got a great story. It started like the first location is there. It's in a bowling alley,
Wow.
an old bowling alley, and it was actually kind of like a little bit of like your story. They ended up working with George R. R. Martin, who's based in Santa Fe, and asked him for help funding their big idea.
Yeah.
And this is all in a film that there's a documentary film, I think you can get on Amazon. And, they found this person who believed they had a vision. They found this person that, had
Vision.
funding and was into sci fi and believed in their project. And, he helped them get off the ground. And now, as you know, there's one in Denver. There's
Yeah.
about to be one in New York. There's one in outside of
I think there's
Dallas,
someone in Texas. Yeah.
Las Vegas.
Yeah.
So you definitely have to go to Meow Wolf when you're there.
Oh yeah, I can't
Um,
wait. I'm excited. I will
and it's kind of
definitely
part
go
of
there.
this new, what I've seen happen over the years of my working there with the Film Fest is this new generation of young emerging artists in Santa Fe that I'm really
Cool.
enjoying and designers. And that's kind of what I am like Site Santa Fe
Yeah.
also, like this
Okay.
amazing museum
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't
there.
been for a while, and yeah. So any kind of tips anybody has,
Hmm.
just like let me know. They can write on Instagram at our film's name, Underground Orange, or Bajo Naranja in Spanish, which is kind of the attempt to translate that into Spanish, Underground Orange. And so yeah, so the film will be playing there in about a week, right? On Wednesday. The Violet Crown is a very beautiful venue. I guess it's an older theater, but they have a chain now in different parts of the United States. And actually, I'm playing tonight in Austin at the Violent Crown. So that was yeah, that
Yeah.
was it's kind of cool to
They
check
do a
out.
great job and they have a bar and they have
Yeah,
food and it's just like a great way to experience films. And I feel like they also show a lot of like cool independent films and
yeah.
like it's not
Yeah,
your
it's cool
traditional
because
film.
yeah, it's super art house, like the art
Yes.
cinema, the directors, and even the way that when you walk inside, it has almost like a film museum kind of vibe. At least the one in Austin here,
Hmm.
kind of with the faces of famous directors around the area and old posters, and so it kind of gets into the spirit of cinema, which is really special. Yeah,
Yeah, they do a great job.
yeah, they do a great job. So yeah, I'm excited to travel there in a few days, and I think I'll be there on the 23rd, 24th, and 25th, which is screening. And you were saying there's like the Uber was not very, it's not there's not a lot of Ubers there anymore, maybe, or there was never.
Yeah,
So maybe I'll just walk around.
yeah, walk around. It's a great place to
Yeah,
walk.
yeah,
That's usually what I do. I stay centrally, walk around. I love staying I stay at the Motel 6. I love the Motel 6
cool,
downtown. I
cool,
feel like it's my own little apartment while I'm there.
cool. That's
And
great.
you can walk to everything. That's where I
Yeah,
go when I'm on my own. The festival puts me up usually somewhere really
nice.
nice, thanks to our sponsors.
Yeah,
But
It's a beautiful festival. It's a really really
you should
special.
come to the festival. Are you going to
I
come to
know.
the
I
festival?
wanna go. I remember when Godfrey received the honorary award, the Lifetime Achievement Award. That's really special. I know it means a lot to him. I think he's been in Santa Fe for years, for 40 years or something like that, 30, 40 years. I think his base has always been there, the Institute for Regional Education. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know exactly when or why he moved from Louisiana, which is where I believe he was born,
Okay.
to Santa Fe, but we'll find out when we meet him in a week.
Yes, find out for us.
Yeah,
Well, it was
yeah.
cool when he received his award. He brought a lot of people out from the film,
Oh, cool.
uh,
Wow, like Mike
from
Tyson or whatever.
from New York. Oh, that was the biggest shock to me was seeing Mike Tyson at the end
Yeah,
of that. Like that blew my mind. Like that's what when I had a
yeah.
chance to talk to him, what I talked to him about. I'm just like that was like the best. Like
Yeah, yeah, it's
yeah.
funny because Godfrey's work has inspired, by the biggest filmmakers we have, like Scorsese and
Hmm?
Lucas and Coppola and Soderbergh. I know he and Soderbergh are friends, and Steven is the producer of his last film, Once Within a Time, and
Yes.
I think
I
he's produced
loved that film.
two or three of his films. Yeah, so it's wonderful to be able to have a conversation with somebody who has inspired the greats of all of time in terms of cinema and his work, and pick his brain about, how to
Hmm.
how to do it, how he conceives. It's fascinating how he creates. He showed me once actually, but we'll save that for the discussion in Santa
Yeah,
Fe.
for sure. Well, I mean, you're talking about like how he thinks and how he works,
Yeah.
but I'm also, I have to say, like picking up on how you think. I like the way your mind works
Thanks.
and how you take all these different pieces and like you were saying you don't want to steal, like you're not because you're reading like
Yeah.
nonfiction while
Yeah.
you're creating, but I
Yeah.
can see how you're like taking all these different ideas and then just kind of it's like a mashup or
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
I
totally.
don't even know how to explain. Like
Yeah,
you
no, totally. It's a mashup. It's
you're
a
like
mashup of imagination, research, and
but like
personal
and
experience.
yeah, and applying these
Yeah,
different
yeah,
thoughts to different things and like I mean I can't
yeah.
even like almost
Yeah, yeah.
can't
I
grasp
mean,
it,
I
but
read anything. You can read
yeah.
anything. Remember, Da Vinci said he used to get ideas from reading like the back of like a bottle of
Right.
water or something. I
Yeah.
mean, like reading anything will provide some, like I was reading Just Kids, Patti Smith, one of my characters' names comes from her, one of the main characters, the orange hair girl in the film.
Yes.
Her name is Patty, from Patti Smith, and the names of my film are the names of the characters are based on different famous artists. So there's Frida, like Frida Kahlo, or
Uh-huh.
Dante from Dante Alighieri, the writer from Italy, and Francisco de Goya, who's a painter in Spain. So there's there's a bit of yeah, there's you take references, you could take names or ideas from as much. Yeah, I mean, I guess the idea of plagiarism wasn't really a literal type of statement. I think we all kind of plagiarize, right? There's a book called Steal
Right.
Like an Artist.
Yes, yes. I haven't read it, but I hear people talk about it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
but you're doing, but it's kind of like, I don't know if you've ever taken an improv class where like when you
Yeah.
start like your topic in improv, you're supposed to think two steps away from it, like and start there. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of like, I feel like it's a little bit like that. What,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of improvisation when you're writing, stream of content. I mean, how do you go about writing a script? It's very
I don't
complicated.
know. Like I'm
Yeah.
not a writer at all. Like
It's very complicated.
I'm a technical, like I can write a memo or like a manual.
Yeah.
Like creative writing escapes me. I just don't really know
Yeah.
how to do it.
Yeah. You
But
gotta organize scenes, you gotta like fill it in,
that part,
as you're going, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And
right.
then you have to condition your ideas, and you have to make it realistic to your budget, and you have to think
Yeah.
about, locations that you can actually access. And
Uh-huh.
you can't just film in, like, Grand Central Station, and it's not
You
that
can
easy.
try.
You can try,
I
but you
found
know.
like it's when you say you're a student, like when you're young and you're a student, you can often get away with all that stuff.
Yeah,
You
you
know,
can.
like
You can find
sometimes.
permits and stuff. Yeah, you
Yeah.
can do it. It just, just realistically to the
Yeah.
when the costs are adding up and everything. So, yeah, it's a very challenging industry. It's a very difficult thing to do, but it's so many of us are passionate about it, and we put up with the sadomasochism of getting a film made, you know.
You're right. Yeah. What did you
So,
want to be a filmmaker when
um,
did you decide?
yeah, I think I always was interested in the arts really, but I mean discovering them as an undergrad and then wanting to do something and then going through different fields to try to discover it because I didn't really know, when you're 19, how do you know really what I mean, some people are lucky, but I was like I tried painting, I tried writing novels, I tried doing like installation art, and then I discovered that maybe you could put them all together and like
Mhm.
that would be like cinema to some degree, and then add music and performing arts as well. And I think that's kind of when I realized, wow, this is really satisfying to be able to integrate so many different art forms and study music and songs and then put those in the film and work with performers who elevate the project, who put their blood and sweat and soul into it, and make your script, which is just the bones, into life. And
Mhm.
that is a very profound process to participate in. And so, yeah, I mean, it's very exciting when you're working, you're collaborating, and then you start to get addicted and you want to do it all the time.
Right. Yeah.
But
Uh,
you can't because you can't just go out and direct a movie on a weekend or like, hey, what should I do today? Why not just direct a movie? Like a painter or a dancer or a musician can just pick up a guitar and start playing.
right, right. I mean, I
You
guess you
know,
could start writing. Yeah,
You
maybe.
can write, you can
Yeah.
write, and that's it. That's totally it. I think that is the best way to work on directing when you're not directing is like reading and writing and watching movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And collecting all that inspiration, like
Yeah, having
that's like
experiences,
yeah,
having
experiences and
having new
travel and
experiences, yeah.
yeah,
Getting into uncomfortable conversations with people and finding out what you believe in and why you believe in those things, and then taking that into the writing process.
yeah.
It's
Yeah,
profound
you got to
stuff.
have experiences. I had another artist speaking to my class last week, and
Mm.
he was all like, you have to go out and have experiences and
Yeah.
travel, and like, otherwise you don't have any content, maybe.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And you
yeah,
don't maybe know, or you learn a lot about who you are when you're put into new circumstances. I think that a lot of our identity is a social construct, and we think we know who we are until we take ourselves out of that social construct and put ourselves into another one. And for me, even being in Argentina does that to some degree. I feel different types of inhibitions or less inhibitions. And I get to experience myself in a totally different way, like speaking Spanish, for example.
yeah. I was
Yeah,
gonna.
when you speak another
You're
language, right? It's crazy.
you're
Yeah.
fluent, I assume, by
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You get used to the sound of your voice in another language. It feels like a different person almost. And so,
Uh-huh.
having that context, getting out of the United States, getting out of English, getting out of, and exploring kind of different parts of your identity, I think is your nationality, your national identity, your language identity. There's so many identities that we have as a human being. We focus on usually the gender and sexuality and racial identity in the United States, but
Right.
there's actually a lot of them, of that define who we are and the essence of who we are. And so it's important to get out and explore and experiment and try new things. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I like that perspective.
Yeah.
We have to go. I think we even went
Ah,
over, which it was so easy to do.
it was so much fun. It was so much fun.
Yeah, so one more time, Violet Crown, Wednesday the 25th, 6:30. Underground Orange is the film, your first feature.
Yeah.
Really fun film, but with like, an important
Thinking.
messages
Mm.
and great story, um, especially for this time in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Definitely.
and you're the writer, director, star, executive produced by Godfrey
Yes.
Reggio, who will
Yes.
be there. And Yeah, check out your Instagram at Underground Orange or
Yeah.
in Spanish.
Bajo naranja.
Yes. Bajo Naranja. Yes, that makes
Yes.
sense. Okay.
Yes.
I'm working on my Spanish,
Very good. Very
trying
good.
to learn it.
Good. Good.
All right. I hate to say goodbye, but
Thank you
we'll
so
see you
much.
soon.
Yeah.
We'll see you in Santa Fe.
You in Santa
And
Fe.
yeah, thank you
Really
so much
excited.
for joining us.
Thank you so much.